is this Heated Rivalry, but instead of hockey, it's murder? Was this a delight or was this just violent? Check the trigger warnings on this because there will be a few. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the book that I literally finished like 2 hours ago, and I have a lot of thoughts, don't we? The Secret History meets Call Me By Your Name in Micah Nemerever's compulsively enjoyable debut novel, These Violent Delights. A feverishly taut Hitchcockian story about two college students whose escalating obsession with one another leads to an act of unspeakable violence. And that's kind of all that happened. There is a lot more to this story than that. However, what you do need to know about this story going in is that it is a fiction, sort of thriller, sort of not, about these two boys, their relationship, their inner worlds, very much a you and me against the world kind of relationship. This book is more about the mind of the murderer than the event of the murder itself, which sets it apart from other thrillers, but it's something to know going in, depending if you want more of a character study or need something with a more propulsive plot. It kind of is the anti-Heartstopper because yes, the main two characters are boys who fall in love with each other and are obsessed with each other, and not much else around them outside of them exists except to be hurdles for their relationship going smoothly, is how they view it at least. But in saying that, this book is very insular and cerebral, with detailed, intricate, beautiful writing with an impending sense of doom and dread throughout. I would recommend this to you if you want something dark, twisted, psychological with a slight dark academia aspect to it, because both of them think they're intellectually superior to everyone else even when they're not. And I would maybe not recommend this to you so much if you want a fast-paced book, because I would say this was slow. A lot of it is cerebral, abstract, in the mind rather than being out in the world with stuff happening. This won't be for you if you want something with regular plot beats, because it's more vibe than plot 100%. I did really find myself intrigued and drawn into the story. However, I feel like other parts of it were perhaps a little bit long-winded. Let's talk quickly as well about the title. These Violent Delights is the start of a Shakespeare quote from Romeo and Juliet. These violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die, like fire and powder, which as they kiss consume, which sets the tone for this book, and also featured in, I think it was New Moon.
These violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die, like fire and powder, which as they kiss, consume.
Now let's talk about the prologue, because you will literally get to that in the first couple of pages of this book. You really need to know that, both about how it sets up the story really well in some ways and not in other ways. The prologue, we get a dark winter's night. A man is leaving work in the dark alone. His car won't start, the payphone's broken, and this is set in the 1970s. And he's invited into a car with two teenage boys in it who offer him a ride. Bonnie and Clyde, more like Clyde and Clyde. Then we go back in time to when the two boys first meet in ethics class. They're immediately drawn to each other. We are mostly in Paul's psyche, although it's not first person, but it reads like first person because it talks about him and what's going on in his mind more than Julian, the boy who he meets. We learn about their home lives. We know more about Paul's because we don't see Julian's. We just get Julian talking about his home life. And for a long time, I wasn't sure whether we should trust what he's saying or not. And I won't reveal if he was lying or not, because what's the fun in that? But in terms of pacing, we don't even get to talking about the possibility of the event that does happen in the prologue with these two main characters and their victim until 3/4 or maybe 2/3 of the way through this book. And this is over 450 pages. So it is quite a long book for not a lot happening in terms of plot. I did find myself really intrigued by their relationship and how toxic and complex it is, but that's a lot of repetition for over 300 pages, you know? My favorite part was the very beginning and the very end, where we've got be gay, do crime, wondering what is going to happen, how is this going to end, and thinking about all the different possibilities and at what point is it going to end. 85% of this book, or at least how it feels, is the boys just being with each other or thinking about being with each other. And I do find the setting interesting because it does read as quite contemporary, but of course it's in the 1970s set in Pittsburgh. So you do have a bit of a slight vintage vibe, and the technology that's mentioned is of course different to now. It's not a huge aspect of the story, but you know, there's no cell phones. There's some interesting reference to historical events of the time and shortly beforehand, like World War II was not that long before this story takes place. And Paul, one of the characters, is Jewish, so that plays a factor into his family dynamics and their place in society at the time and how people treated them. Obviously, because of the 1970s setting, being openly gay is not really okay, which perhaps makes their connection even more feverish, compulsive, and obsessive. And the thing I like about this book is that it does frame their relationship as codependent and toxic and unhealthy. It's not seen as something to aspire to. It's definitely framed as something that is problematic, because it is, if you couldn't tell already by what we know in the prologue. And we get a bit of that exploration of toxic masculinity. The way the boys talk about violence and violent acts to each other is really interesting too. You also get a glimpse into how white privilege and white male privilege plays out in here, even though it's not overt. Probably because the boys don't even think about it themselves, because they're just white boys doing what white boys be doing, killing other people. They meet in ethics class at college, and they are only 16 or 17. They're both very book smart, so they got accelerated into college early. The fact that they have this intellectual discussion at the beginning about different psychological experiments on people in history and their different stance on that sets the tone for why they want to or feel justified to commit violent acts, because they see it as a form of justice, which I almost wish was highlighted more. Because we're getting Paul's interpretation, we are seeing Julian through his eyes. When Julian is presented to us, we are also, as the audience, wondering, is this an accurate portrayal of Julian, or is it just Paul seeing him through his rose-tinted glasses? They care about each other, but in a really messed up, non-healthy way. They do also have resentment to each other, even though they're codependent, and they're constantly psychoanalyzing themselves and each other, with shifts in how much they trust or mistrust each other based on what they choose to keep secret or share with each other. Paul read to me as autistic coded, which adds an interesting extra element to the story of him feeling like an outsider or not socially gelling very easily with people a lot of the time, contrasted with Julian, who uses his charm to manipulate. I was like, is Julian successfully charming other people, or are they seeing right through him? Because again, it's through Paul's point of view and him thinking that the sun shines out of Julian's you know what. So while Paul is awkward and cold, Julian is the opposite in a lot of ways, because he is calculated and cool. But we also find out that Paul can be calculated as well. Their strained relationship and the complexities within it, the emotional hold they have over each other, is really the meat and bones in this story. Twisted kids who think they are in their own way kind of geniuses and better than everyone else, while also having this self-loathing, but also a big loathing of other people too. And one of the examples of that is Paul, even though he really resents his mother. And there's elements of grief in this story too, because we meet his mother, his two sisters, his grandparents, and even his great-grandmother. We see his family and how his family operates, and that Paul is quite proudly working class. His father died in circumstances that the book talks about, and so his family, especially his mother, have been going through this grief, and he clearly resents her and has these really messed up attitudes towards his mum. At the same time, he holds his family in a really high esteem, and that plays out into certain choices he makes, especially towards the end of the book. When I first started reading this, I was like, is this Heated Rivalry, but instead of hockey, it's murder? Although, I have to say, again, this is about teenagers, and there is spice that is alluded to, but it's not overt, and I think that's like how it should be. It shouldn't be overt if they're teenagers. So if you're looking for a spicy book, this ain't it. Go find something else. But also it's interesting how the intimate scenes or snippets that we get also can feature violence as well. It's consensual, but it's still messed up. Like, check the trigger warnings on this if I didn't already say that, because there will be a few. This book is not gory. It is grim though, because it features a lot about death or violence, even if it's not all happening on the page. And while there is so much to dissect about Paul and Julian's relationship, I feel that this book would have been even better if it was shorter, because it started to feel repetitive the more I read. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I couldn't read big chunks of it, even though it could be compelling. The fact that it was the same dynamic over and over made me less engrossed in it. And it was only when it got to the third act that I really found myself being like, oh my gosh, I need to keep reading. So I think it was almost a little bit too late. And when they kept having the same conversations over and over, I actually felt myself getting more confused about what they really meant or what they were really saying, because it was kind of rehashed but yet made muddier each time. So yes, I did enjoy it. I'm not sure if I would reread it. There's some really good quotes in here that I took photos of. But if you start with that prologue, my point of view is you're waiting for it to happen the whole way through. So even though the prologue is a really good hook, and I was like, yes, this sounds great, the fact that it took over 300 pages or whatever to get there, to me, maybe you would have been better off not including the prologue or choosing a different part of the book. And again, would have benefited being shorter to give it more oomph in terms of plot, because there really wasn't much plot to bring this whole thing together. The characters are not likable, and I don't really mind about that, because you can read about people who are not good people or who are flawed people or whatever. And I like that this doesn't try to give them a big redemption, whatever. It's like, yeah, these kids are messed up and that's what you need to know. But even though they're not always likable, they are interesting and even frustrating, because of even within their dynamic, you're like, can't you just talk to each other in a normal way? So if you've read it, let's have a convo in the comments. Have you read this? Did you enjoy it? Do you want to read it? Have I put you on it or off it? I think it was less dark academia, less thriller than I thought it was going to be. And for what it was good. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It can be hard to rate books that are like that. I'm about to get into some spoiler territory, so if you don't want spoilers, please leave now, not before liking, subscribing, and commenting your thoughts, because I have a lot. So I need to talk about it briefly to the spoiler people. So if you need to go, please go. Check out my other videos that are in the description, and I'll see you next time. Spoiler time for those of you who've read it or aren't going to read it and don't care. So basically, right, we've got the boys fall in love, be gay, do crime, plan a murder, do the murder, and the police are investigating. I was not sure how it was going to end. I was like, are they going to do a double murder suicide? Are they going to run away? Are they going to break up? Like, what's the story? And I actually had to reread the very end, because I was like, wait, did Paul just kill Julian? And I thought he had, because let me tell you, because
let me tell you something. All right. Let me tell you something.
Because this is all in Paul's mind, and he doesn't always talk clearly and concretely, and it's more abstract or up to interpretation or with metaphor sometimes. I misread. Well, my camera's falling. Is that gonna be all right for now? Okay, that'll do. I misunderstood this and I had to go back and reread it because I was like, wait, did he survive? Like, what happened? Paul's got his hands on Julian and it says he imagined Julian's body the same way, given over to fractured synapses before the final stillness. When he opened his eyes, Julian's were waiting to meet them. His fear was so absolute that Paul knew it would be there forever. There was something absent in his eyes. Now, when he said it would be there forever, I was like, is that because he's dead, so he'll have the same expression the whole time? Paul couldn't remember what they looked like before. He'd never told Julian how beautiful his eyes were, blah, blah. Paul leaned down and pressed his lips to Julian's forehead. Julian made a strange sound, almost like a sob. I know that when people die, sometimes they've still got air in their lungs and stuff, and depending how they are moved, they can make a, like, sound or expulsion of air. So I was like, wait, is it because he moved his body? This is where my brain went. For a long moment, Paul held him there, still wanting only to breathe him in. Then he let go and allowed Julian to push him away. And I again was like, is this metaphorical? Because Julian's off in the ether, dead, and his body is there. So is it like Julian's last rejection of him, but like from the spirit realm? What? Okay. Paul heard the uneven footfalls back toward the countless roads to a world outside the two of them, but couldn't force himself to watch. Yeah, that bit I was kind of like, hold on. He didn't know afterward for how long he lay there in the mud and dead leaves alongside an absence he should never survive. The absence of Julian, because he's dead. It does mention as well how he walks back and finds his knapsack next to where Julian's car had been. And I was like, wait, did he like move it again? So to get rid of the evidence? I don't know. Julian got away and then leaves the note and the photo. So the note is the US Open 1970 Keselowski versus Kaplan Championship final with the opening move circled in red, which also is that like this, the red marker, because I know that obviously we've got blood featuring in this story, plus Paul with the red paint, plus Julian with the red circle at the end. Wasn't the whole thing about the chess that Julian was studying that was doomed from the start? So maybe these two were doomed from the start because of just meeting by chance, and that will basically mess up both their lives. But also, will it mess up Julian's life? Because I wanted to know more as well about his other like boys or friends that he'd had in the past, because it's alluded to, but we never really find out. I thought for ages Julian was telling fibs about being from a rich family. I was like, this doesn't sound real to me. He sounds like he's making stuff up. You know, he's a bit of a liar, blah, blah. And then it turned out to be true. So, yeah, there's a lot in this to go through. And there's quite a few quotes that I took note of. A lot of it was beautifully written and it is interesting, but at the same time, sorry, camera moving. I'm almost done. Even though it was really engrossing in some parts, overall, I don't think it did it for me. And I'd probably give it about a 3.5 to 4 stars at this point in time. Again, it's very fresh in my mind because I literally just finished it a few hours ago. A lot of thoughts. Funny story as well is that I originally was going to borrow this from the library a few years ago. I was on hold to get it next in line for like 3 months. So I think the person before me lost it or something happened. So then I was like, I'm dying to read it. So I'm going to buy it to read it straight away. That was like 2021. So 2020, I was about to say 2025, 2026, the time to read it, 5 years later or whatever. Okay, I'm gonna go now because of that. Thank you for watching. If you're gonna comment anything spoilery, maybe hide it with like a first comment and saying spoilers ahead and then a subsequent comment. I want to have a conversation, but I don't want to ruin it for people. Thanks for staying till the end. I'll see you in the comments and I hope you have a great day, and like and subscribe for more from me, including my camera falling over. So see you in the next one. Bye.